We are now about 18 minutes away from loss of signal with the Orion crew. Again, we use the Deep Space Network to communicate with the crew members when they are this far from Earth. This is the first mission since Apollo when we have had humans on the Deep Space Network. As you recently heard Capcom Jenny Gibbons call to the crew, we expect their closest approach to the moon to be at MET, or mission elapsed time, of 5 days, 25 minutes, and 34 seconds. At that time, their altitude would be 4,067 statute miles above the Earth's surface. Just over 2 minutes later, they will reach their maximum distance from Earth at mission elapsed time 5 minutes, 5 days, 27 minutes, and 39 seconds. The altitude at that time would be 252,756 statute miles. These are our latest numbers, and we'll make sure to verify and confirm those once those milestones have been achieved. Obviously, we will be without communication to the spacecraft at that time, so once we regain communication, we will make sure to find out those numbers and report those to you. Checking in on the lunar targeting package, the crew is now in their discussion of the limb, seeing the limb of the moon, that illuminated part. Currently at the windows taking photos and making annotations are Victor Glover and Christina Cook. And we are expecting loss of signal in about 13 minutes. We will regain that signal with the crew about 40 minutes later. A milestone worth mentioning that this day marks the first time in more than 50 years that humans will observe the moon directly, a critical opportunity to practice how lunar science will be conducted during future Artemis missions. I've continued to reference the lunar targeting package throughout this broadcast, which is the primary tool, and that consists of two key components. The first of those is the Lunar Geography Review, which helped the astronauts study major lunar features in advance. That also helped them learn to orient themselves during the flyby. The Lunar Targeting Plan provides a detailed timeline of observation targets, background science context, and specific instructions for the picture the crew should take, and verbal descriptions of what will be helpful to the science team reviewing those pictures later. That's what we've been tracking real time and what the crew is using right now to keep up with their next milestones.
Integrity Houston, 10 minutes till the LOS. We'll take a snappy sit rep from the cabin if you have one.
Okay, Jenny, that came, we missed most of that, but just a 10-minute warning, is that what you're saying?
10-minute warning for the LOS, and I'll take a quick sit rep from the cabin, please.
All right, cabin is still full of excitement. We've got Christina in window 2, Ike in Victor in window 3. Reed's actually been trying to get some images out of the docking tunnel. We can see the Earth and the Moon and part of the Moon out of the docking tunnel, which is pretty good. And I'm just grabbing some footage right now with our interior cameras.
Copy, Jeremy. We'd like to know what camera Reed is using and also the status of window 1. Looks like there might be a shroud removed.
Okay. Reed was using the Z9, and the T-shirt shroud is still on window 1, but we took the camera out of it, so maybe that's what you're noticing. But when I looked in there, I saw a lot of sunlight reflecting around.
Copy. That makes a lot of sense to us, Jeremy. I want to remind you, coming up on this LOS, it will take sit reps in the blind, and as more and more of the moon is in darkness, we will take any report you have on impact flashes.
you'll have to say again your last. There's a lot of conversation here, and I was on the other side of the cabin, so I missed all of it.
Look out for impact flashes, and we'll take sit reps in the blind.
Okay, impact flashes, sit reps in the blind. We got it. And yeah, just so you understand what's going on with window 1, there is light coming through the outer hall from window 2 into the inside of window 1, if that makes sense. Like I can see the inside of the vehicle when I look between the 2 panes of glass.
Copy.
You're getting your first live look at Orion, the moon, and the Earth. Everyone in this picture. This is a live view from the Orion spacecraft. Currently aboard Orion, 4 crew members, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen. And on the Earth, all of us, all of humanity. You can see the moon is starting to get a little bit dimmer as the astronauts are going to pass behind it. Now 6 minutes and 26 seconds away from that loss of signal. Again, we will be out of communication with them for about 40 minutes until they come around the other side of the moon and we can re-establish contact.
Integrity Houston, you are 6 minutes from your 40-minute lunar flyby LOS. From all of us, it's a privilege to witness you carrying the fire past our farthest reach. Thank you. Godspeed.
Thank you for that, Jenny. And thank you to all of you for allowing us the immense privilege to be on this journey together. It's quite amazing. And as we go on this journey, thinking about the NASA mission to explore the unknown in air and space, to innovate for the benefit of humanity, and to inspire the world through discovery. And as you've gone along on this journey with us, hopefully we're doing just those things. And as we get close to the nearest point to the moon and farthest point from Earth, as we continue to unlock the mysteries of the cosmos, I would like to remind you of one of the most important mysteries there on Earth, and that's love. Christ said in response to what was the greatest command, that it was to love God with all that you are. And he also, being a great teacher, said the second is equal to it, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so, as we prepare to go out of radio communication, we're still to feel your love from Earth, and to all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon.
Houston copies. We'll see you on the other side.
We will see you on the other side.
Poignant words from NASA astronaut Victor Glover, and a little bit of a love letter from the other side of the moon all the way to Earth. Glover touching on the teachings of Jesus, including to love your neighbor as yourself. We are now less than 3 minutes away from loss of signal with the Orion astronauts. The Artemis II crew will be out of signal for about 40 minutes as they are on the other side of the moon, continuing their work photographing the lunar surface, and they will reemerge, and we will also get this view on the other side. Just about a minute and a half now until we lose communication with the astronauts aboard Orion on the Artemis II mission. Now 5 days and 6 minutes since their launch on April 1st. Again, we'll be out of communication for about 40 minutes. And this really beautiful view of a crescent moon and a crescent Earth. How great thou art. "30 seconds now until we expect loss of signal. And we have confirmation of loss of signal of the Orion spacecraft as it flies behind the moon. We expect to regain communications with them in another approximately 40 minutes. This was expected as their spacecraft is now out of direct line of sight with Earth and behind the moon. And this is a poignant moment as it's the first time in over 50 years that we have humans completely unreachable by anyone else on Earth. No matter how distant or secluded, we could reach anyone living on Earth, but while the crew flies behind the moon, it's simply impossible to make contact with them. This is a live view inside the Science Evaluation Room here at Johnson Space Center and just down the hall from Mission Control. This team has been monitoring the flyby all day as the team has continued capturing targets on the lunar surface. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . We even got to see this team in action as they were helping the astronauts identify some of the features they were seeing on the moon but not expecting. There will be a couple of milestones during this loss of signal. The first will be when the astronauts make their closest approach of the moon at MET 5 days, 25 minutes, and 34 seconds, when we expect they'll be 4,067 statute miles above the lunar surface. Their maximum Earth altitude will be reached just 2 minutes later, at 5 days, 27 minutes, and 39 seconds, when their altitude should be approximately 252,756 statute miles. Once those milestones are reached and we have confirmation, we will report the official numbers. Throughout the Artemis II mission, astronaut voice, images, video, and vital mission data must traverse thousands of miles, carried on signals from NASA's powerful communications systems, the Near Space Network and the Deep Space Network. Let's learn a little bit more.
NASA's Artemis II will send 4 astronauts around the moon, preparing humanity for a long-term lunar presence and future journeys to Mars. Enabling communication and navigation for this test flight are NASA's Near Space Network and Deep Space Network. With antennas around the world and a fleet of relay satellites, the networks will deliver vital data to and from Earth through all phases of the mission. The networks are seamlessly integrated at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, where Mission Control coordinates the network handovers. These transfers represent a delicate dance between the two networks, exchanging support as the mission shoots toward the moon. On the launch pad and during their early orbit phases, NASA's Orion spacecraft and Space Launch System rocket will rely on communications and tracking services from the Near Space Network. After its translunar injection burn, the Deep Space Network's global array of antennas will serve as Orion's primary communication support during lunar orbit. As the mission journeys farther into space and away from Earth, signal strength weakens and bandwidth is conserved for crew communications. The astronauts will have a near constant connection to Earth, ensuring their safety on a journey farther into space than ever before. We say near constant because as Orion goes behind the moon, a planned loss in communications will occur. The Deep Space Network will be standing by to reacquire the signal as Orion reappears. The Artemis II mission also provides an opportunity to test new capabilities. Using laser links, NASA will periodically transmit Orion data to showcase the benefits laser communications could have for future human spaceflight missions. The data from Orion, sent by radio signals or laser links, is massive. The mission is gathering images, data, and video, while also generating details about mission health and crew voice files. All of that data gets processed here on Earth, where systems compress it for efficiency. In the future, we'll upgrade these systems on Earth so that image and video clarity improve with each moon mission. With the Artemis II test flight, we're evaluating the communications infrastructure that will help carry us into the future as we explore the moon and journey forward to Mars.
We are now about 33 minutes until we expect to regain communications with the astronauts aboard Orion. And in the meantime, I've got Dr. Kelsey Young, Artemis Science Flight Operations Lead, here with us. Thanks for joining me, Kelsey.
Thanks for having me. This is such an exciting day.
Oh, no kidding. It has been so cool to hear you communicating directly with the crew. And I know that you have been preparing for this for years, so I am so excited for you and for your team. So just to get into that background a little bit, tell me about your background and what you've been doing on console.
My background is as a field geologist. Actually, I studied impact cratering in the field for my PhD, so all these descriptions of impact craters have me just absolutely swooning. How I got into this, though, is, during my PhD, I got an internship at NASA and ultimately never left to integrate science into flight operations. So we developed the Science Officer Console, for which this is the first mission we're supporting. We developed the Science Evaluation Room that's right upstairs, and so it's so gratifying to see this operation structure come to fruition, especially on a day like today.
I would have to imagine so. And we've got a great view of the Science Evaluation Room right now. Is there anything that has stood out to your team so far?
Absolutely. So as you might have heard in some of the press briefings and content that we've been putting out, color and albedo were really exciting targets for us. We've heard several amazing color descriptions so far. Just to highlight maybe one of them, we heard about greenish and brownish hues near Aristarchus, which is actually a feature that we can see here from the near side. And those greenish hues could actually tell us something about the volcanic evolution of that area. So you can bet that the science team is going to be prioritizing downlinking those images and the crew audio that we didn't hear that went into those recordings to learn a little bit more.
Wow, that is fascinating. I was hearing those colors and very interested just from a personal standpoint, because looking at the moon from, 250,000 miles away, we don't see green or brown. So just hearing that, them being so close and getting to see that, fascinating, and I know very exciting for you. So what are you expecting to see in the upcoming portion of the flyby?
The upcoming portion is actually going to be really exciting. So right now, as we speak, while folks in the room are kind of taking their stretch breaks and everything, the crew are still hard at work. They still have targets to image and describe during this LOS. But when we come out, the first thing, of course, we're going to hear about is Earthrise. We're really looking forward to hearing about the crew's experience with something that we can connect with and that, Apollo 8 brought us such amazing images from. But then we start to get into describing the Terminator, as well as looking for things like lofted dust, which tell us about the modern lunar environment. Then the vehicle's going to orient away from the moon for an hour and then pivot back for the eclipse observations, which is a whole different set of science observations that we're really looking forward to.
It's kind of nice that the crew will get a little break in there, because they have been hitting it hard today with photos and videos and annotations. What are you hoping that the crew sees coming up? Is it that lunar dust?
Oh my goodness, that's a hard question to answer. I mean, we've already gotten such great descriptions. I mean, the Terminator seems to just be like one of their favorite things to look at and describe. So I feel like, that was something we were looking forward to. I feel like we've really gotten some great descriptions. So absolutely, I'm looking to the human moment of Earthrise. Lofted dust is an exciting one, and lofted dust will be a target for them in the right around the time of Earthrise, but again in the eclipse period. So I'm really looking forward to seeing. I mean, they've already highlighted just in the course of their flyby so far how the moon has changed, and this is going to be even more dramatic change to go from their end of this kind of lunar illuminated piece of the flyby into the eclipse time frame. And I can tell you they're going to be experiencing a very different moon during that time, and I can't wait to hear what their observations are.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating, and what a privilege that we get to do that on this mission, because that's not always the case. If we had launched on a different day other than April 1st or 2nd, we wouldn't have gotten to see that eclipse. Is that right?
That's correct. April 1st and 2nd. I will say, I was asked a lot in the weeks leading up to the launch, well, what's your favorite day? And my answer truly was, there is no bad day to launch to the moon. We were going to get great science out of it no matter what, but it's a really neat opportunity to, bring the sun into the picture, bring different planetary bodies into the picture while still literally keeping the moon in center stage.
Fascinating. So what differences are we looking for at each site? We're hearing a lot of different terms. We're looking at craters. We're looking at mare. What are the differences that you're hoping to see?
We do have, as you highlight, kind of different prompts for each target. That's what they're looking at in their lunar targeting plan, which I know you've been showing. And we have even different prompts for the person with the, the really long lens on the camera versus the people with the unaided eye. And you've heard the crew talk about, oh my goodness, when I go from one to the other, I can really detect different nuances. And that's something that we experienced in simulations, but hearing them actually, see it for real has been really gratifying. But we're looking for different things based on the target. Sometimes we're looking for color. Sometimes we're looking for texture. For the Terminator, we're looking at kind of what texture and morphologies pop out to you and what kind of diversity you see along the Terminator. You've heard, Victor especially make some comments about future impacts for exploration. So already I think that their descriptions in this first part of the flyby have told us something scientifically, but also about future surface missions.
Well, it was so interesting to hear Victor talking about he was imagining in his mind's eye being down on the surface and walking around. That was very cool to hear. And when we're thinking about targets, I know some of them are determined based on the launch day because that determines the lunar illumination. So the ones that we're looking at today, how and why were these selected?
Such a wonderful question. This really gets at at the heart of some of our really highest priority science questions. Illumination conditions is a big one, right? So of course we need the targets that we're interested on the lunar feature to be illuminated by the sun in order to view them, but the timing in which they see them during the flyby enables us to ask different questions. So you heard in the pre-flyby crew conference talking about, well, the same pair, Reed and Jeremy, will get to actually look at Glushko crater twice, and that looking at it from different illumination angles allows us to understand that feature better and connect color and albedo with topography and morphology. Then you have other craters where you want to look at it with the sun shining on it obliquely versus straight on, and that tells you something different about the scientific objective that drove the target being on the targeting plan in the first place.
We've talked a little bit with the viewers today about what the crew is able to capture in this short time frame of those craters in different lighting conditions. Could take years for something robotic to be able to do based on attitude maneuvers and where the sun is at. So can you just talk a little bit about the importance of having both the robotic operation and having the crew?
Absolutely. We definitely don't want to minimize the impact of orbiting spacecraft. Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is the one that's often referenced. Data from LRO and its payloads have really been instrumental in getting us, frankly, to this point for Artemis II and future missions. But the human experience, the crew observations that we've already been hearing about, it is such a perfect complement to the orbiting spacecraft data because they are able to have this unique perspective. They are far enough away where they can make these contextual observations. You've already heard it. How many times have we heard the crew and their science sit reps say, if I track this feature from all the way up here in the northern hemisphere down to the southern hemisphere, here are comparisons I can make. That right there is not something we had the ability to do with the Apollo missions, and it allows just literally in the blink of an eye to synthesize observations that it would take, a really significant effort to coordinate with different orbiting platforms, and they're making it like that.
Wow. It has been very, very exciting to hear all of their calls so far. And so I've heard they were able to capture every single target so far too. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. And I think it's important also to remember that, and I know the science team is anxiously awaiting this, we've been hearing from the crew members who are not at the forward windows, right? Those crew who are, really in the thick of the observations, they are recording minutes-long observations per target on their crew tablets. We will be getting those down starting here in a couple hours, and that's going to contain really meaty science information that we haven't heard live yet, and that's going to form the basis of my conversation with them tomorrow morning, where we're going to have a really deep dive into the science and absolutely nerd out about what they were able to do today. One of the most gratifying things for me today is hearing multiple crew members say, thank you for putting the discussion times in the targeting plan, because when we have had the ability to put multiple brains on a problem, we have elevated each other. And I'm looking forward to them, sleeping on it overnight and then us actually being able to really, truly have an elevated science discourse tomorrow.
Well, we're looking forward to it too, and I cannot wait to hear everything that you guys get to learn overnight from some of those audio recordings and just everything that they'll be able to share tomorrow. So, Kelsey, I know you are very busy. You've done a great job today, and thank you so much for joining us for this interview.
Thanks for having me. It's such an exciting day.
We are now expecting acquisition of signal in about 24 minutes. As a reminder, the Orion spacecraft has flown around the other side of the moon where they are out of contact with our deep space network. And we just heard confirmation here in Mission Control Houston that we have reached the closest point of our destination to the moon at MET 5 days, 25 minutes, and 34 seconds. And we anticipate the spacecraft's altitude is approximately 4,067 statute miles above the moon. We're continuing to track what the crew is doing while around the other side of the moon. They are continuing to take pictures of the of the moon, the Earth now out of sight. What they're in right now is a crew choice event. The science team has encouraged them to find interesting features on the surface, to take photos of those, and describe why they were interesting. Something else that they'll be looking toward next, just momentarily, will be impact flashes. They've got a few minutes allotted to look at the darkest portions of the moon. They're interested in short-lived flashes on the lunar surface because these would be caused by impact bombardment. After their impact flash targeting, the team is interested in if the crew can see lofted lunar dust. This would only be visible just before Earthrise. Now 20 minutes until we expect to regain communications with integrity and the astronauts for Artemis II. We're live in Mission Control Houston at NASA's Johnson Space Center, but there's a team over 750 miles away also monitoring today's operations. And of course, just like us, they are in LOS, or loss of signal, with the spacecraft. This is LUCA, the Lunar Utilization Control Area, and it's joined by LISA, the Lander Engineering Support Area, which are twin control rooms that will support missions and operations in lunar orbit or on the moon's surface in real time at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. The Luca and Lisa are right next to each other and just a short walk away from the SLS Engineering Support Center, which is used during launch, and the POIC, where science on the International Space Station is monitored. Luca primarily supports Artemis science operations, while Lisa will provide engineering support for landing astronauts on the moon. During this mission, Artemis II, teams in the Luca will use the facility to support first-of-its-kind science operations to better understand the deep space effects of microgravity and radiation on the crew's physiology, immune systems, and ability to complete various tasks. The data from these science operations will inform future crewed flights to the moon. For future crewed missions to the moon, members of the NASA Human Landing System Mission Insights Support Team, a group of engineers, safety leads, flight operations experts, and technical authorities will work in the LISA. There, they will monitor lander systems in real time and be involved in key decision-making processes throughout the mission. Teams are using the LISA during Artemis II to observe mission operations and using the opportunity to inform and prepare for future crewed landings to the moon's surface. We now expect to regain communications with the astronauts aboard Orion in about 17 minutes. In the meantime, a little overview of how our crew members flying by the lunar far side at an altitude of between 4,000 and 9,000 miles are testing the capabilities of the Orion capsule. Artemis II visualization lead Ernie Wright has simulated views of the flyby using detailed topographic maps of the lunar terrain and photorealistic lighting scenarios. The Artemis II crew members have been using these visualizations to prepare for this historic mission, which is paving the way for future exploration of the moon's surface and beyond.
So the most exciting thing to me about Artemis II is just the return to the moon. We haven't been there in 50 years. Human eyes are going to see parts of the moon that haven't been seen by anyone before. It also recommits us to exploring the solar system in a way that we haven't in a long time. And I think it provides an opportunity for younger generations to understand the excitement of doing that kind of exploration. Artemis is our return to the moon after 50 years. The emphasis of Artemis is going to be, first of all, science, but second of all, learning to sustain a presence on another world. First on the moon, but we're hoping that that's a stepping stone to Mars and other destinations in the solar system eventually. Artemis II will be a flyby mission. It's not going to land. We're testing all of the technology that we've created for flying to the moon since Apollo. A lot of systems have been modernized, and we need to make sure that all of those work. The astronauts will be looking out the window at parts of the moon that have never been seen by human eyes before. They will be flying by the moon at an altitude that's much higher than Apollo's orbits. And so they will see the entire disk of the moon, including areas that are closer to both the North and South Pole that astronauts from Apollo never saw. All of that depends on the lighting, which we really won't know until launch day, but we can practice with different lighting scenarios. It's hard for people to sort of picture that in their mind. If you can make a visualization of it, show them a movie, that helps everybody choose the targets and also practice aiming at those targets. The astronauts have actually been looking at these visualizations through the lens of the camera and practicing aiming at the various targets. This is a map of the surface of the moon, obviously, but it shows what the Apollo astronauts could see in sunlight while they were in orbit. The brighter parts are the parts that they could see. The darker parts, like this entire area here and places that are farther north and south, are places that they couldn't see in sunlight, either because it was nighttime there or because it was beyond the horizon of the astronauts. All of the Apollo flights orbited the moon at a distance of about 110 kilometers. Because the astronauts were flying at such a low altitude, their horizon was actually quite close, and they couldn't see the North and South poles. And this whole area over here was not in sunlight at the time. And it includes this amazing impact feature here called Orientale. Orientale is a very large impact feature. It's about 650 kilometers wide. It's got multiple rings. These are rings that form like ripples in a pond from the impact, but of course it's on a huge scale. The middle of Orientale has that sort of dark basalt lava covering it, like the dark spots that we see on the near side. It's one of the biggest ones that's more on the far side than the near. So seeing it with human eyes and sort of picking out features that maybe you don't even see in robotic cameras is an important goal for the mission.
This live view in the Science Evaluation Room, or the SIR, here at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, just down the hall from where we're at in the Artemis Mission Control Room. Teams continuing to monitor the flyby. The crew continues their observations of the moon, even though they are out of touch with Earth. We expect to hear from them in 12 minutes and 26 seconds. Again, this is approximately 40 minutes loss of signal while they are out of reach of the deep space network. Right now, they are imaging or attempting to image lofted lunar dust. Throughout our coverage, we've talked a lot about the science and engineering behind today's lunar flyby, but we also spoke to the crew about what the moon means to them and how they see its place in human history.
I remember being a little kid lying in bed at night and just looking out at the moon and whatever phase it was in, I was thinking, man, my friends that live like 20 miles away, they can probably look out and see that same exact moon. And then when I was in the Navy and I would look out at the moon and I'd be halfway around the planet, I would think, man, my brother can see that moon where he is and he's halfway around the planet from where I am. And it's a connection of life on Earth. We can all look up and see that moon.
It represents history. It is a witness plate. Everything that's ever happened to the moon is still written on the moon. There's no processes of wind or change in the Earth, geologic processes like we have here that change it. And something that's been telling and can read out the story of its own evolution, there's something beautiful about that.
I've also learned from my indigenous mentors that they refer to the moon as grandmother moon. So you've probably heard of Mother Earth. They use grandmother moon because grandmother moon is responsible for the water in their community. The grandmothers, sort of protect the water source, just like the moon moves the water around the planet, affects the tides. It's something that represents something different for each individual culture around the planet. And that's really neat because we all share that same moon in the night sky.
We all have seen the same side of the moon in different lighting conditions our whole lives. And so it seems very familiar to us, but it's also kind of unknown. When we get up close, some of the imagery that we'll get to describe and to share with people will be very unique. And that nature, both of those things being true about this one entity that we all know, just is really special.
It's just the epitome of a symbol of both something that's in each of our hearts, but that's also represents exploration and reaching.
You're looking at a live view inside Artemis Mission Control here at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. We are currently out of contact with the Artemis II crew. This was a planned, or not really a planned, but a tracked loss of signal that occurs when the crew flies behind the moon. We use the Deep Space Network to communicate with the crew, and when they are behind the moon, they are out of reach of that Deep Space Network. And when you consider our nonstop communications during the time in which we live, this is even more striking. For the Artemis II crew, they're only currently communicating with each other. Now, we expect to regain those communications in under 9 minutes from now, and we also are hopeful for a view of Earthrise. Despite being out of communication, the crew is continuously capturing imagery of their predetermined lunar targets. Now about 7 minutes, 25 seconds until we anticipate regaining communications with the Artemis II crew aboard Orion. In the meantime, Artemis II lunar science deputy lead Marie Henderson is trained these astronauts to capture and document their views of the lunar surface for all of us to enjoy back here on Earth.
I cannot wait to hear their voices when they get to the far side of the moon and I can hear them talk about seeing the moon out their window. I try to imagine it now and I tear up thinking about it. Ooh, now I gotta hold on a second. We have human eyeballs connected to wonderfully smart brains our astronaut friends have. They are going to be able to observe the moon in multiple different ways. They can use their eyes, they'll look through their camera and snap pictures, and just looking out the window getting that human experience. But during Apollo, the astronauts were so much closer to the lunar surface. Our astronauts are going to be doing a flyby at a higher altitude, so they're going to be able to see the whole moon as a lunar disk on the lunar far side. That's a brand new, unique perspective that humans haven't been able to look at before. We are doing a lot of lunar geography training with them. They have study sessions and quizzes they can do that are assigned to them. You know, even if you're an astronaut, you still get homework. We actually get in the mock-up. In that enclosed physical space, we have to think through the hardware that they have, the cameras, the computers, their microphones to make these observations. There's 4 windows up front. Through one of those windows, one of our astronauts will be using a Nikon D5 camera with an 80 to 400 millimeter lens. So something that allows them to zoom in really far and actually take more detailed observations of the surface. It's almost like looking through a pair of binoculars as well. It's just like being a geologist out in the field. They're telling us what they're seeing, looking for colors, textures, different morphologies, and comparing the region that we're having them look at to the regions that are around them. We have a science team that is planning the targets that are going to be observed, putting them all on the timeline of how they're going to be observed, and then taking the first look at the data when it comes down. The Apollo astronauts were only on the moon for 300 hours total, and they only went to the equator. That's like going to places that were safer landing sites, and they only saw so little, 300 hours total. And so we have so much more to explore and so much more to learn, and we are the beginning of the next generation that gets to start being a part of these discoveries.
We are now 4 minutes and 28 seconds until we expect to regain communications with the astronauts flying aboard Orion on the Artemis II mission. They are now flying behind the moon. While behind the moon at an MET, or mission elapsed time, of 5 days, 25 minutes, and 34 seconds, we expect this was the point in which they made their closest approach, 4,067 statute miles above the lunar surface. We're live in the Artemis Mission Control Room in Houston, but we are not the only room monitoring today's flyby. As you can see, this is the SIR, the Science Evaluation Room. It's in the same building and just down the hall. It's a multidisciplinary science team supporting the Artemis II crew in real time, including experts in lunar geology, impact cratering, volcanism, polar science, imaging, and visualization. You can see the SIR here. That's the Science Evaluation Room. It's embedded within Mission Control to provide science input during live operations like what we see today. But additionally, the Science Mission Operations Room is a back room that processes data, evaluates imagery, and supports rapid analysis. We also have our science officer, Kelsey Young, here on console today. She's serving as the primary interface between the science team and the flight controllers, ensuring science priorities are represented during mission execution. Coming up on 1 minute and 36 seconds until we contact Orion. Meanwhile, aboard the spacecraft, the crew has continued executing their lunar flyby tasks. As we discussed earlier today, these activities have been precisely timelined, and this is the fourth of 5 blocks of time during which the crew will be observing the moon from Orion's windows. At this time, pilot Victor Glover and mission specialist Christina Cook are observing the moon at windows 2 and 3. One crew member is in window 2 with a blue shroud over the window, taking photos and using an 80 to 400 millimeter zoom lens, while the other astronaut is in window 3 using their portable computing device, also known as a PCD, to make annotations. And both of those crew members are making audio recordings of what they are seeing. They are wearing headsets connected to their PCDs, and those audio recordings are being sent to the science team tonight. We are not hearing those live. However, we have been hearing quite a lot of great descriptions from the crew who have been serving as the support. Right now, the support team members are Reed Wiseman and Jeremy Hansen. Those team members are providing science sit reps, situation reports, calling down a few times each hour to discuss what they're observing. And even though we're out of contact with them right now, they are still conducting those science sit reps as they'll be available once they come back around the moon. The situation reports include how the crew is positioned, any missed targets, or anything unexpected they saw. They're also including lunar target descriptions, any hardware issues, and their emotions and reactions. Again, we are standing by to acquire signal from the Orion spacecraft. We're in the Artemis Mission Control Room at Johnson Space Center, getting our preliminary contact with Orion, that acquisition of signal coming after a 40-minute loss of signal, during which the crew was flying behind the moon, out of contact with anyone on Earth. We are getting our first views from Orion after the loss of signal. Orion has come back around the other side of the moon, and that little crescent that you see is Earth, over 252,000 miles away. With this transit complete, lunar flyby continues, but Orion has also technically begun its journey home. Right now, the crew are getting a few moments to enjoy and take photos of Earthrise for themselves, and we expect to contact them shortly. But we do have good signal coming from Orion. This view from inside the Orion spacecraft, all 4 astronauts now back on the other side of the moon and in contact with us on Earth. Their tasks for lunar flyby did not stop as they went behind the moon and out of contact with us. We anticipate during that time they were attempting to image some impact flashes, short-lived flashes on the lunar surface, which would be caused by impact bombardment and potentially even a lofted lunar dust. Right now, of course, they are getting pictures of Earthrise. After this target, they will get a short observation break. It's about an hour long, actually.
Houston, integrity, comm check.
Integrity, we have you loud and clear. How many?
Houston, we have you the same, and it is so great to hear from Earth again. To Asia, Africa, and Oceania, we are looking back at you. We hear you can look up and see the moon right now. We see you too. When we burned this burn towards the moon, I said that we do not leave Earth, but we choose it. And that is true. We will explore, we will build ships, we will visit again. We will construct science outposts, we will drive rovers, we will do radio astronomy, we will found companies, we will bolster industry, we will inspire. But ultimately, we will always choose Earth. We will always choose each other.
Integrity from Earth, our single system, fragile and interconnected. We copy. Those of us that can are looking back.
We are happy to say we copy.
Those first communications back with the astronauts aboard Orion. Christina Cook calling back to what she said just before translunar injection burn, that with this burn, we do not leave Earth, we choose it. The translunar injection burn served as not only what put them on this trajectory to fly around the moon, but what also committed them to splashing down in the Pacific Ocean on flight day 10. At this time, the crew is entering an observation break. We expect this to last about an hour, and it's probably a welcomed break following their very, very busy day taking pictures, making annotations, making audio recordings, and communicating all of the wonderful things that they are seeing on the moon. This observation break is also partially due to the fact that we will be entering an eclipse later. This will be the first solar eclipse that humans have seen from the moon. The astronauts will need to wear eclipse glasses for the first 2 minutes until the sun is completely covered by the moon, and then they have additional targets that the science team is hoping that they will photograph. We will have communications with them during that eclipse time frame. Because of that eclipse, Orion's attitude must be changed right now so that its solar arrays are in the sun. This will help it charge the batteries needed to power it through that eclipse time frame. This view on your screen is a visualization. The spacecraft now 4,224 miles away from the moon, and that number will now continue to grow, while the number of distance from Earth, 252,699 miles, will continue to shrink all the way until our crew is back home. Again, we are MET, mission elapsed time, 5 days and 58 minutes since the launch of Artemis II. We have reestablished communications with the crew and the Orion spacecraft, now entering a little bit of a break while they are out of visibility, or the moon is out of their visibility. The spacecraft will be reoriented to view the moon ahead of an upcoming eclipse. This current attitude maneuver helps charge the solar arrays and batteries aboard Orion that will power them through the eclipse.
Integrity, Houston. In mission control, all of your flight controllers and your flight director have flipped There are Artemis II patches around. We are earthbound and ready to bring you home.
That's great. See the light of day as we head back to sea.
A very special moment just now in mission control. Ahead of the crew's flight to Kennedy Space Center and during one of their last sims or simulations here, they visited the mission control team in Artemis Mission Control in Houston and brought us each a patch. Everyone in the flight control room has had these on their signifiers at their console. On one side of the patch that you've probably seen is the moon with the Earth behind it. Now that we've passed behind the moon and we are returning home, the flight control team has instructed everyone in the room to switch their patch around so that the Earth is closer and the moon is behind us. We are really looking forward to seeing the Artemis II crew, and the Capcom Jenny Gibbons did call that update up to the crew that the flight control team here has turned their patches around as was instructed by the crew during that last sim, and we are counting down the days until they get home. They are now 5 days, 1 hour, and 3 minutes mission elapsed time into the Artemis II mission. Joining me here in the room, Artemis Mission Control, I have Angela Garcia, Artemis II Science Officer. Thanks for being here, Angela.
It is an honor to be here. What a day. Everyone's been buzzing. I can't contain myself. So it's been a really awesome day.
So you're sitting on console at the Science Console now. Have you been in the SIR earlier today?
There's a lot going on. So I went here first, and then I'm going to go there after.
Clear, Houston.
All right, Integrity, we hear you. That was a little clipped, but I think we have a better link now. We experienced some blockage from a solar array. We moved it, and we are in bias tail to sun.
Okay, Houston, you're coming in loud and clear, and copy, we're in bias tail to sun now.
Affirm and Integrity, just so you know, we did not hear your response once we flipped our patches. Jeremy, we heard you call down, but you were clipped, and then we briefly lost comm. Glad we're back.
Okay, copy that. We were just excited that we got to share in that you, the MER, and Mission Control flipped your patches around, and that side of the patch is getting to see the light of day. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Our pleasure.
Okay, Angela, so can you tell me a little bit about your role supporting Artemis II and the science preparation for the mission?
Yes, so I'm one of the 3 science officers. So Kelsey's been on console all day. I'll take over kind of closer to the end of the day. And then Trevor Graff is on the planning shift. And so it's the 3 of us in this 24-hour cycle supporting the mission. And so the science officer console is a brand new console to Mission Control. And it's not every day that you get a new discipline incorporated into Mission Control, so it's been such a significant milestone for us. And it's just a testament to like the commitment that the Flight Operations Directorate and NASA have, that they're going to be integrating science and maximizing science throughout Artemis. So it's really exciting. And then the science preparation. So I'm on the operations team, but I'm also on the training team. So all the incredible training and shout outs that you've gotten today, it warms my heart. It warms everybody's heart in the science evaluation room. I promise you that. But so all the classroom training, the field training, the mission simulations, right, we were part of all of it. And that is what we did to get the crew to be. They are a part of the science team, and they are the forefront, that nice edge. And they're just been doing such a great job today.
I know. I imagine that you have to be pretty proud of them. Their reports have been fantastic. So I would like to know a little bit about how you have developed procedures for this crew. What kind of science activities are they carrying out inside the spacecraft?
Yeah, so the procedure development has been a unique challenge. I'd say the exploration science that we're doing is inherently pretty flexible, and operations is, I'd say, inherently has more structure and rigidity. And so to marry the two and to operationalize the science that we want to get done has been a challenge. But I think we've been able to go through these processes and create good products at the end and have a good plan. And yeah, it's been really great. What was the second part of your question?
Just what kind of these science activities that they're performing, which of those have you really had a hand in?
Yeah, so a lot of the procedures help organize what the crew is doing in the cabin. And I know we've talked a lot about what they've been doing, and they've been doing a lot, and it's been a little dark, so I can re-explain what some of those things that they're doing. So the observation blocks are about an hour long, and the crew is organized, the 4 crew members are organized into 2 pairs of 2, the window team and the cabin team. And the lunar targeting package that you've been showing up and that the crew have on their handheld tablets is really the instructions for the window team. So the window team, the 2 crew members are looking out the window. One has the camera with the long lens. One has, they're just looking out the window with their unaided eye, and they're taking these detailed observations. And then halfway in that observation block, they do the window team position position swap. So that's what what Capcom's been calling out, and they'll switch positions, so each crew member has a chance to have that long lens, and then that's just what the window team is doing. There's also the cabin team, where they also have duties that they're doing. We're asking a lot of the crew in this time, and then the cabin team, they have the interior camera, and they're taking images inside the cabin. They're also supporting the window team, where, you've heard some call-outs where looking out at the bright moon and then looking inside the dark cabin and looking at their LED screen is a lot. So the cabin team is also helping support, target, and guide the window team into specific targets on their plan. They're also helping call out these science situational reps. So they're looking out a different window and listening in to what the crew who are really down and in the science on the window team are doing, and they're giving us insight. And those recordings that the window team is doing are going to be uplinked or downlinked overnight, and we're going to be able to chew on that data. But yeah, they're helping. They're doing a lot, and so making sure we have a plan that's flexible, but also make sure that we check off all those boxes was really important.
So tell me a little bit more. You talked earlier about the analogs that the crew has done. What kind of analogs or environments were really useful for this?
Yeah, so for procedure development, right, you have so many different environments that you can do. You have classroom, like we said, you have the Orion mock-up, you have simulations, and at least for developing the plan, we kind of did it in a tiered approach, because each of those different analog environments helps us answer a slightly different question and has a little bit of a higher fidelity. So we would start with the classroom. So we would we would just get into a classroom, we would put all the hardware on the table, and then we'd almost role play of like, you be Victor, you be Reed, you be Jeremy, and I'll be Christina, and like, let's just do the plan how we think we should do it, write that down, and then just keep iterating on that, and then...
Integrity Houston for a tag up pre-forward link LOS in place of the Flight Director Conference.
Okay, Jenny, we're ready.
All right, crew, I'm going to roll through a couple of topics here. The first two are for timeline. First of all, Reed for your toilet maintenance. It is a shortened toilet maintenance where you do not have to do the oxone changeout. That portion of the procedure is canceled. Victor, you have an HHP stop activity on your timeline. We need you to perform that as scheduled for bandwidth reasons. For your next portion of the flyby, in particular the eclipse, we want to remind you that you can take off the eclipse glasses when the sun sets and you are simply looking at the corona. And then finally, for the D5 with the long or zoom lens, which is set for solar corona, we want to remind you that when you are capturing Earth shine, you will likely have to adjust the exposure. That's all I have for you. Let me know if you have anything for us.
Okay, Houston, we copy all. Thanks for those words, Jenny.
All right, just a quick call up to the crew ahead of a forward link LOS, meaning that we won't be communicating with them, but we will be receiving their communications and data during that time frame. So Angela, we were talking about analog environments. You were telling me about the classroom and getting in there and pretending who's Victor, who's Reed. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, it works pretty well. So you're going to do the plan how you expect it to be, and then once we finalize that plan, we'll give it to a completely new group of people and have them practice it, and then they'll be like, these steps don't make sense, and we'll reiterate on it over and over, Then we'll take it to a higher fidelity environment like the Orion mock-up, and we'll do the same thing because that volume is smaller, the window placement, their seating, what things have we forgotten with this, addition of this this environment. And then once we, reiterate on that, we'll take it then, we'll give it to the crew and have them execute off of it during mission simulations. That's the highest fidelity that we can do before we send it to space. So this is the first time we've had to do this because we're a brand new console. And it just sparks so many neurons of like, how are we going to do this for surface missions and integrate this in so many different ways. So excited to have kicked off this process, but there's so much more to come.
Fascinating. And I think it was really well thought out too, because each crew member gets an opportunity to do each task. And so you're getting different perspectives and different insights from each crew member, maybe even about the same target, but something that one person sees could be completely different than something another person notices. So we also know that Artemis II has traveled. They're now on their way home, but they traveled farther from the moon than the Apollo missions did. So what makes that vantage point scientifically interesting?
Yeah, observations are so fundamental in the scientific toolkit, particularly observations from different perspectives, different scales, and with different techniques. And so for this, so we really tried to make the plan to optimize those. There's pros and cons for all those things for this mission. So we really just focused the plan to have all those pros. So in terms of scale, this zoomed out scale, you can learn different things. This different perspectives. So their perspective, as Kelsey talked about, photometry around when they orbit the moon. And then also just their different the different things they're able to observe. So yeah, let me talk a little bit about scale, because I think observations at different scales, you can gain a lot of different information. So like, for example, if you were an astronaut on the surface looking at a rock, and you describe at this micro scale. So in training, we kind of talk about observations from micro to macro, or from outcrop to orbit. So looking at a rock at this scale, you can describe its components, you can describe what it's made of and its colors and its minerals, and you're like, okay, and this rock came from this boulder, and it's this part of this boulder, and these are the different things that I'm observing around. It gives me context to this sample, and then you zoom out a little bit more, and you're like, okay, well, I can see that this boulder came from, it rolled from this mountain ridge, or this high ridge feature. And then because I can see the trail that it came from, okay, now let me describe this ridge and different parts in it, and maybe other boulders that I'm seeing. And then you zoom out further of the orbit scale, and you're like, this ridge is a part of this larger crater. So all of those different steps give you different information, and so that's why observations at these different scales and these different perspectives are so important. So this zoomed out kind of far view is this full lunar disk view. It's the full lunar. On Earth, we see the full lunar disk as well, but now we're able to see it on the far side, and we're able to see it, all at the same time, which enables the astronauts to compare very quickly to different parts of the surface. And the color particularly is very compelling, because you can just be able to very quickly compare from 3 different regions. Is it in the same family? Is this actually a little bit different? Compare that to what they see in their orbital data that they have access to on their portable computers, and really just be able to tease out that nuance and information.
Yeah, we heard them make a lot of those connections today, and especially the color. We talked with Kelsey about this a little bit, just how exciting it was to hear the browns and greens and things like that. I cannot wait to see those pictures. Yeah. So one last question. We are coming up on the last lunar flyby observation block, and this is when we are going into a solar eclipse. So can you tell me what you're interested in the crew learning during that time frame?
Yeah, so the data set. So yes, there's so many things. How to pick one. So I'd say the thing that I'm most interested in seeing is some of their annotations that they're taking. So in this opportunity, it's a very dynamic type of experience, in that we don't normally see this activity. And so being able to have crew observe the solar corona, and then also annotate it in their on their portable computing device is just such a unique thing that humans can give to missions, and also particularly being able to annotate what they're observing while they're talking about it is also unique to being able to have astronauts in orbit as well, because we won't be able to have annotations on the lunar surface because the astronauts will be in suits. They're going to be collecting samples, they're going to be deploying instruments, and so personally, I'm really excited to see some of these annotations and to see how that develops over time, because you've heard a lot of descriptions, and I think when people are describing something that's unique and different, you can interpret it differently. But if you're drawing and you're marking, particularly just going back to like the color provinces, for example, and those boundaries, you know exactly what they meant. And really, I'm just very excited about those annotations. There's been some famous annotations that the Apollo crew have made, particularly about solar coronas and the structures and lofted dust that have given a lot of debate within the scientific community of they're observing this phenomenon, and now it's our job to hypothesize of like why are they observing this, like what is going on. So I think that's just a really cool part of exploration and science, and this beautiful thing that we're about to do.
Well, now you've got me excited about the annotations too. I mean, I've been excited about the pictures and the audio, but now
don't sleep on the annotations. I am very excited to see these little sketches that they're able to draw out, and we have pictures that they can just draw right on. It's like this particular thing is different than what we've seen, so I'm excited about that.
I'm excited too. Angela Garcia, thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great time tonight on Console.
Thank you, and you've been doing a great job, and it's so excited to see where we go from here.
Thank you so much. Integrity Houston, you have 3 minutes until we go into a forward link LOS. We will be back up with you in about an hour during the eclipse on Madrid.
Thanks for the heads up. Look forward to seeing you on the other side.
Likewise.
We're live in Artemis Mission Control at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. This is a live view from the Orion spacecraft with our Artemis II crew inside. That's Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen. We are still live for our lunar flyby coverage. The crew is in a short break while the spacecraft is pivoted away from the moon. We are going to be going into a solar eclipse. This is the first time anyone has ever seen a solar eclipse from the moon. So it's going to be a unique vantage point for our crew. But ahead of heading into that solar eclipse, we need to charge the batteries on the Orion spacecraft. Therefore, we have positioned the solar arrays into the sunlight to allow time for those batteries to charge. We will get back pointed at the moon just in time for that solar eclipse. We are also in a forward link LOS. What that means is essentially we cannot send calls or commands to the crew right now from the ground. However, we clearly get all of their data and communications. The spacecraft is now 4,632 miles away from the moon, and that number will only continue to grow as the distance from Earth shrinks, now 252,523 miles away. Our closest approach to the moon today was approximately 4,067 statute miles in altitude. Our maximum distance from the Earth is suspected to be 252,756 statute miles. Both of those moments came while Orion was flying in their loss of signal time frame behind the moon. The crew also set that new record today, beating the Apollo 13 record of distance from Earth. This is an animation or a visualization that you can track anytime, day or night, by visiting nasa.gov/track-Artemis. This shows you how the spacecraft is positioned as well as their distance and velocity, now traveling 930 miles per hour. During this break in their time today, the crew is working on a couple of other tasks. Some of those include their National Geographic timeline test. National Geographic was selected through a competitive process by NASA to help tell the story of Artemis II. So you've seen the crew with some GoPros inside the cabin, taking videos and pictures, and with other cameras as well. National Geographic plans to leverage its portfolio of media assets, including magazines, social and digital content, and television programming for engagement opportunities. Throughout the flight, the crew has been timelined a little bit each day to film from a shot list provided by National Geographic, and that includes their morning routine, talking with their families, exercising, and just their overall thoughts about the mission. And I cannot wait to see that footage. Teams on the ground reporting that the spacecraft is looking good and that the power aboard is good as well, all setting us up in a proper position before eclipse. The crew is in a little break during our flyby coverage for today. They will resume their flyby momentarily in about 30 minutes once they get into their observations during that solar eclipse. Now, the moon is our nearest celestial neighbor, orbiting Earth at less than 250,000 miles on average. When our astronauts venture there for future Artemis missions, they'll target landing sites near the lunar South Pole. There, ancient rocks, minerals, and trapped water ice will not only provide resources for human explorers, but they may also contain clues to the formation and evolution of our planet and the solar system. Let's learn more about the lunar South Pole with this video featuring Dr. Kelsey Young, Artemis Science Flight Operations Lead.
We learned a lot from the Apollo samples, but we still have a lot left to learn about the moon. The Apollo missions visited only a pretty narrow swath of the moon. All the missions were concentrated near the near-side equator. Really interesting and really critical insights were unlocked with the Apollo samples, but we have so many questions still to answer about the moon and the evolution of the moon.
And liftoff of Artemis I. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
NASA's Artemis missions are NASA's plan to send people to the surface of the moon. We'll be sending people and roving assets and scientific equipment to, among other things, answer a lot of really compelling science questions. Scientists have a lot to learn about the moon. It's our nearest celestial neighbor here to Earth, so what the moon has experienced, we've experienced. Except here on Earth, we have things like plate tectonics, oceans, forests, people that erase the rock record. Whereas on the moon, that whole record of our planet's history, of the moon's history, is just kind of waiting there at the surface for us to explore. The South Pole, which is where Artemis missions are going to target, is specifically interesting for a couple key reasons. We think there are volatiles at the South Pole of the moon that are not present near the equator. Things like water and water ice that are trapped in the lunar regolith, which basically just means lunar soil, that can easily become untrapped from that lunar regolith, and scientists can scoop up and study for return to Earth. The lunar South Pole is a really exciting scientific target, and it also comes with some challenges for operating. For example, the lighting environment will change drastically within the course of one mission, and even over sometimes the course of one spacewalk. So preparing the crew members, preparing the hardware that we're sending to the moon, and preparing the mission control teams is really, really important. The South Pole Aitken Basin is particularly exciting. We think it's one of the oldest and largest impact basins in the solar system. And if we can get the right rock from the South Pole Aitken Basin and bring it back to our labs here on Earth, we can use that sample to constrain the entire evolution of our solar system and really understand the timing of how the moon and our planet and the entire solar system evolved.
You're looking at a live view aboard the Orion spacecraft of the Artemis II crew, working in the middle of one of their breaks, or really their only break today, during this lunar flyby period. Coming up next will be that solar eclipse. Throughout the Artemis II mission, and of course throughout today, you've likely heard the crew being called with the name Integrity. The Artemis II crew members named their Orion spacecraft Integrity during a news conference September 24th, 2025. The name Integrity embodies the foundation of trust, respect, candor, and humility across the crew and the many engineers, technicians, scientists, planners, and dreamers required for mission success. They said this name is also a nod to the extensive integrated effort from the more than 300,000 spacecraft components to the thousands of people across the world that must come together to venture to the moon and back, inspire the world, and set the course for a long-term presence at the moon. The crew also said that integrity is rooted in a shared core value of NASA, the agency's astronaut office, and the CSA, the Canadian Space Agency. We are 5 days, 1 hour, and 38 minutes mission elapsed time into Artemis II. In this view on the screen, you can see the crew starting to even look through some photos that they may have captured today. We really look forward to sharing these photos with you as soon as we possibly can. And the best way to keep up with those is to follow NASA on social media. You can do so at NASA, and for this mission specifically, at NASA Artemis. Again, we are in a forward link LOS, or forward link loss of signal with the crew, meaning that we're not able to communicate or send any commands to them right now as they were. This is a tracked event that occurs at times, but they could still provide